Imagine a man so elusive, so daring, that he inspired the world's most famous fictional spy, James Bond. But unlike 007, this man was real, and his life was a blend of truth, myth, and pure audacity. This is the story of Sidney Reilly, the Ace of Spies, a man who walked the thin line between reality and legend. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. The man behind the legend. Our tale begins in Russia in 1873 or 1874. The details are as murky as the man himself. Born Shlomo Rosenblum, the only son of a Russian Jewish father, Reilly would go on to adopt many names, the most famous being Sidney Reilly. But before becoming Reilly, he was Sigmund Rosenblum, a name he'd eventually shed as he reinvented himself in the streets of London. At the turn of the century, this mysterious Russian appeared in London, where he quickly adapted to his new life and identity. By 1893, he found himself in Brazil, where an incredible event unfolded. Reilly, ever the opportunist, saved a group of British Army officers from hostile natives in the Amazon. His reward? A British passport handed to him by a grateful British major. But that wasn't all. Reilly convinced British intelligence that he was an Irishman, born in Clonmel, and soon found himself embroiled in a world of espionage. He worked for the British, the Japanese, and perhaps even the Germans and Russians. This multilingual entrepreneur and charming conman was more than just a spy. He was a master of deception. You might not know it, but the character of James Bond was heavily inspired by Sidney Reilly. Fleming, who wrote the famous Bond novels, drew from the exploits of men like Reilly, whose real-life adventures were the stuff of legend. Reilly was a man of charm, intelligence, and audacity, traits that would later define 007. The rise of a spy. Reilly's espionage career took him to the far corners of the globe. He infiltrated Russian Bolsheviks, plotted to overthrow the Soviet government, and gathered critical intelligence during World War I. But what truly sets him apart is the air of mystery that surrounded his life. Even now, his true identity and the full extent of his alliances remain a puzzle. Reilly's life was so captivating that he's been immortalized on screen by actors like Sean Connery, Roger Moore, and Pierce Brosnan, not as himself, but as the legendary James Bond. The line between truth and fiction was thin for Reilly, a man whose existence blurred the boundaries of reality. But let's take a step back. Much of what is written about Sidney Reilly is filled with uncertainty. He's been described as wielding more power and influence than any other spy, an expert assassin who stabbed, shot, and throttled his way to success, and a man with 11 passports and a wife to go with each. Quite fascinating, right? But how much of this is true? According to the Tsarist police, Reilly fled to London in 1885 from France, after robbing 2 Italian anarchists of revolutionary funds. By 1896, he was already working as a paid informant for British intelligence, recommended for his linguistic skills. A year later, he began an affair with Margaret Thomas, the wife of a wealthy but ailing man. Margaret's husband died soon after changing his will to make her the sole executor, leaving her a vast fortune. a fortune that Reilly would soon claim through marriage. Was it all a coincidence, or was there something more sinister at play? The doctor who certified the death was supposedly one Dr. T.W. Andrew, but no such person existed in Britain at the time. With a new identity and wealth, Reilly moved to Port Arthur, where he became involved in timber sales. But Reilly wasn't just any businessman. He was a spy, and his services were soon sought after by Japanese intelligence. Japan, locked in a tense standoff with Russia, needed someone like Reilly. In 1904, he stole the Port Arthur Harbor defense plans and handed them to the Japanese, enabling their surprise attack. Deception, betrayal, and legacy. Thanks to Reilly's intel, Japan launched a devastating attack on Port Arthur. But that wasn't the end of his exploits. Petroleum was becoming the lifeblood of empires, and Reilly was right in the middle of it. He convinced William Knox Darcy to sell oil rights to the British, disguising himself as a priest to do so. In 1909, Reilly infiltrated a German shipyard, stealing vital schematics and killing a foreman in the process. The stakes were high, and Reilly always played to win. Even during World War I, he continued his espionage work, gathering intelligence and sowing chaos among Britain's enemies. In 1918, Reilly was sent to Russia by British intelligence, where he infiltrated Bolshevik circles. His most daring plot? An attempt to eliminate the entire Bolshevik government. For this, he was to be sentenced to death by the Soviets in the 1925. But Reilly's story doesn't end there. In 1925, he was lured back to the Soviet Union by undercover agents. The operation was called the Trust, an elaborate counter-espionage scheme designed to ensnare anti-Bolshevik sympathizers. Reilly was captured, and though his death is shrouded in mystery, records indicate he was executed in a forest near Moscow in November 1925. Some say Reilly survived, others claim he defected. But one thing is clear, Sidney Reilly was one of the most legendary spies the world has ever known. His life, a blend of fact and fiction, continues to captivate us to this day. Was he truly the Ace of Spies, or just a masterful conman who outwitted everyone around him? Perhaps in the end, the truth lies somewhere in between. Sidney Reilly, the man who inspired James Bond, remains an enigma. His life was one of danger, deception, and daring, a life that continues to inspire stories of spies and secret agents to this very day. But remember, in the world of espionage, nothing is ever as it seems. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the life of Sidney Reilly, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more captivating stories from the world of espionage, history, and mystery. Don't forget to like the video and let us know in the comments what other topics you want to learn about next. Stay tuned. What lies in shadows is always the most intriguing one.